Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu wa sallam wa baraka ala nabiyyina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome, brothers and sisters, to another installment of our light study of selected Ahadeeth from Riyaadus Saaliheen. We are still continuing in the chapter of Al-Mujahada, the chapter of striving. And today we'll be looking at the 45th hadith from our study and the 101st hadith from An-Nawawi's collection, Riyaadus Saaliheen. And that is the hadith of Abi Hurairah radiyallahu anhu عن أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال حجبت النار بالشهوات وحجبت الجنة بالمكاره متفق عليه. So in this hadith, Abu Hurairah, he reported that the Messenger of Allah صلى الله عليه وسلم, he said, the hellfire is veiled by that which is desired and craved, while paradise is veiled by that which is undesirable and demanding. And this hadith is agreed upon, collected by both Al-Bukhari and Muslim. Now, in the version of Al-Bukhari, which is the version that An-Nawawi cited, the Prophet used the word hujjibat, which means veiled. While in another version collected by Bukhari and the version of Muslim, the word used is huffat, surrounded or fortified. Surrounded or fortified by. Now, each of these wordings, according to An-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, in both Riyaadus Saaliheen and his Sharh of Sahih Muslim, they pretty much convey similar meanings, and the basic meaning that the Prophet is conveying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is that basically lying between each and every individual person and paradise or hell respectively is its respective veil or fortification. Hellfire has its veils and its fortifications. Paradise has its veils and its fortifications. If the individual engages in one of either of these two categories of acts, beliefs, behaviors, which are considered the veils or the fortifications of paradise and hell respectively, then that person, he or she, will thereby lift the veil or penetrate the fortification and enter that place. So if he does the deeds that are considered from the veils of hellfire, then he'll lift the veil and enter the hellfire. And if he does the deeds or behaviors which are considered from the veil of the fortifications of paradise, he will lift the veil and enter the paradise. So what is intended, it's important to point out, because he said ash-shahawat, desires, right? Things that are desired and craved. It's important to point out that when the Prophet said shahawat here, he was talking about those impermissible and forbidden things, not the permissible things that we naturally incline toward, enjoy, and we have been allowed to partake of. So all of those are considered shahawat. Candy bars are shahawat. Enjoying a good soccer game with your friends is a shahwa. It's something that's desirable. It's something that's desired and craved. But that wasn't what the Prophet was talking about, the permissible things, the things we're allowed to do. He was talking about the impermissible things that we desire and crave. So the meaning of the hadith, as it relates to the hellfire specifically, is that there are certain things which Allah and His Messenger have outlawed. But our souls, despite these things being outlawed or banned or forbidden by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our souls incline toward them intrinsically. When we either do not know the religious ruling related to those things, or we don't thoroughly consider, we know the ruling, but we try not to think about the ruling because we like it so much, because we want it so much, because our soul inclines toward it so strongly, we purposely try not to think about or consider the religious ruling. Or we fail to concern ourselves with common decency and societal norms. There's some people who are morally depraved. And so not only will they do the things that they desire to do which are forbidden, but they'll even do them publicly. Because they don't care about perception. They don't care about moral decency and decorum. They don't care about these things. When people lose that sense of haya, that sense of shyness and embarrassment, when people see them doing the wrong things, then they'll just do those things freely. When these things happen, and we start doing these things, these forbidden things, they are, as the Prophet described them, like veils. They are like fortifications. They are like doors. That on the other side of it is hellfire. And if a person engages in these beliefs or behaviors that constitute the hawajib, the veils of hellfire, or abwab, the doors of hellfire, or the fortifications of hellfire, then that person will end up walking through that door and entering that place, waliyadu billah. So in other words, what the Prophet is saying when he says, hujjibatin nar bishahawat, he says that the hellfire is veiled by that which is craved and desired. What the Prophet is saying is that these things can result in punishment in the hellfire. Basically, beware. Jahid nafsik. Strive against yourself, strive in earnest to keep yourself from giving in to your nafs al-amara bisu, that part of you that encourages you to do the wrong things. Don't give in to that. Why? Because if you go ahead and lift that veil, you might enter into that evil place, hellfire, waliyadu billah. So basically the Prophet ﷺ is saying that everything which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prohibited and He ﷺ has prohibited is from hawajib, is from the veils of the hellfire. And if we do those things, if we engage in those activities which Allah and His Messenger have forbidden, beliefs or behaviors, then we will actually run the risk of lifting the veil and entering that place. And that includes things like illicit relationships, which our souls naturally incline toward the opposite gender. But we have to control ourselves, rein ourselves in, and not do anything which is illicit. Intoxicants. Some people are inclined toward consuming intoxicants. And so again, they have to rein themselves in and resist that temptation. Why? Because that's a hajib and hawajib and nar. It is a hijab, it is a veil that can lead to the hellfire. Engaging in interest, a riba. Pride and arrogance, being prideful and boastful and braggadocious is another veil. Thievery is another veil. Cheating is another veil. Backbiting, which many of us engage in, and we enjoy talking about people, especially people that we don't particularly like, even if they might be Muslims, unfortunately. We'll engage in eating their flesh and we'll convince ourselves to make excuses to justify what we're doing. But this is another hajib, or another hijab, I should say, another veil that can lead to the hellfire. And so basically the Prophet is telling us, jahid nafsik, strive against yourself, not to lift these veils, not to engage in these beliefs and behaviors, because they can lead into what? They can cause you to enter into hellfire, cause you to be punished in the hereafter. Then he said, on the other hand, he said, وَحُجِّبَتْ, he said, and paradise is veiled bil-makarih, by things which are undesirable and demanding. So when he says undesirable and demanding specifically, he means the demands of deen, leading a religious life, exerting the energy and effort required to pray on time, as instructed, consistently, and to perform all of the other required and recommended acts of devotion, fasting when we're supposed to fast, making hajj, and spending the money that it will take, if we have the money and the means, spending that money so that we can go for hajj, paying the zakat, paying what we're supposed to pay from what? From awsati amwalina, not from the worst of what we have, not from the best of what we have, paying that zakat, striving against ourselves, almost like the Prophet saying that this mujahada is the price we pay to be from the people of paradise. It also includes, when the Prophet talks about the demands of deen, it also includes things that we don't, things that don't come naturally to us. Things that we kind of have to twist our own arms and force ourselves to do because they don't come naturally, like repressing our anger. Somebody does something to make us upset, to make us angry, and our deen tells us, la taghdab, don't get angry, don't act out, don't act upon your anger, control your anger, don't let it control you. This is not something that comes naturally. When we get angry, the natural instinct is to what? Is to act upon our anger. But the Prophet is saying no, the deen is saying no. So we do this thing even though it doesn't come what? It doesn't come natural. This is from al-makarih, from the demands of deen, or from the things which are not, they're not natural and they're undesirable. Also forgiving and forgetting when you've been wronged. And this is tough for all of us. Most of us struggle with this. Somebody wrongs you, they've wronged you. It's not something where you have misinterpreted their action. You have made a mountain out of a molehill. You have basically made the situation something that's not. No, you have been wronged. Forgiving and forgetting. It's not easy. And so this is another one of the makarih, the things that will get you into Jannah. The veil that if you lift it, it will get you to Jannah. Being charitable. Not the obligatory charity, but beyond that. Being charitable. And being kind to those who have been cruel to you. These are things that don't come naturally. These are things that generally we struggle to do. And the Prophet is telling us, it's part of what he's saying when he says makarih. This is included in al-makarih. It also includes al-makarih. It includes patiently bearing the hardship and challenges that are part of life, which is a major pillar of faith. This patience, as-sabru ala aqdarillah al-mu'lima. The patience upon the hardships and calamities which are bitter, which hurt. And this is one of the hardest things to do at certain times, under certain circumstances, and depending on the hardships, one of the hardest things to do. But it's part of the makarih. It's part of the undesirable thing that is a veil that if you lift it, it will lead you into paradise. It's from the makarih, from the hawajib, from the veils of paradise, from the fortifications of paradise. And I just want to kind of digress on this for a minute. Brothers and sisters, this reality, the reality of hardships and being patient when you are confronted by hardships, is one of the hardest things to do in the deen, but it's one of the most beloved deeds that we can do in the sight of Allah. And I know that there are probably people out there who are hurting, who are experiencing some type of calamity, because it's the reality of life. Life is not always peaches and cream. It's not always a walk in the park. There's always peaks and valleys. And some of us may be in one of those valleys. One of those valleys could be a person's marriage being in the toilet. Excuse my expression. A person is having some serious domestic issues and the future looks bleak. The situation looks like it's certainly headed for what? For divorce. For the nuclear option. A person loves his kids, but his kids don't love him back. The relationship is non-existent or barely existent. That hurts. It's a calamity. It's something to struggle. Person struggles with unemployment. Person struggles with poverty. They're employed, but they just don't make enough, a living wage to subsist. A person is ill himself, maybe terminally ill or chronically ill, or has a relative, a loved one who is terminally ill or chronically ill. These are all examples, brothers and sisters, of some of the hardships that we all face at certain times in our life. And when we face these hardships, especially if we face a number of them on various levels and degrees, maybe a major hardship and then 3 or 4 minor hardships, when you put them together like major hardships, what can happen is there will be certain voices that will begin to whisper to you. And those voices will tell you that Allah has forsaken you. Allah is angry with you. Allah doesn't love you. You are working so hard and trying to be a good believer, and Allah is putting landmines in your way because He doesn't want you to succeed. He doesn't consider you worthy of succeeding. And He's going to continue to make your life miserable until you give up. So if you want ease, give up. And some of us start to listen to that voice because it's so hard to be patient through some of these hardships. We start to doubt that Allah is with us. We start to doubt what Allah said when He says, "La yukallifullahu nafsan illa wus'aha." Allah does not place on a soul a burden greater than what it can bear. We start to believe, we start to doubt that. I can't take this. I can't bear this. And Allah should know it. Allah has forsaken me. We start listening to that voice. Don't listen to that voice. Because the Prophet ﷺ is telling us in this hadith, وَحُجِّبَتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ. And paradise is surrounded, it is fortified, it is veiled by the hardships, by the difficulties. And so when we're on that path, the path of paradise, it's going to be harder. And that's why the people who struggled the most and experienced the most hardships, in spite of them being the most beloved to Allah, was Al-Anbiya, was the messenger of Allah. As the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the Hadith, he said, the Shadd al-Nasi bala'in Al-Anbiya. He said the people who receive the greatest test, the harshest trials, are the prophets. So we shouldn't listen to that voice, but rather we should listen to the Prophet. The Prophet's coming now and telling us with this Hadith. Don't listen to that. That voice is shaitan. That voice isn't telling you the truth. That voice is lying you. Allah hasn't forsaken you. In fact, your hardship could be interpreted as a sign that Allah is actually with you. And you are lifting the veils. If you can just be patient upon the makarih, you are actually lifting the veil that will enter you into what? Into paradise. So basically the Prophet is telling us when a person practices these behaviors, these lifting those veils that we talked about, the prayer and being consistent in your worship and doing the things that don't come naturally and being patient upon the hardships, when we exercise these behaviors, engage in these behaviors, we're actually opening the door that leads to paradise and stepping inside. In other words, the Prophet is telling us that these deeds, this behavior, is one of the things, among other things, that will enter us into paradise. So what are the lessons, brothers and sisters, that we can take away from what we heard today? The first lesson, brothers and sisters, that the price of paradise is striving, al-mujahada. And that's why we're in this chapter, and that's why this hadith is so pertinent to this chapter, because in a roundabout way, the Prophet is saying, jahid nafsik. Strive against yourself, strive to restrain yourself from doing the wrong things, doing the veils of hellfire, and strive against yourself, forcing yourself to do the things which will enter you into paradise, although they are makruh, although they are distasteful, they are demanding, they are hard, they are bitter at times. Basically, the Prophet is saying, basically do the spiritual exertion and bear the hardships with patience, and this is the price of paradise. Number two from the lessons, the life that Allah created us to lead in this world was not meant to be easy. Life in this world was not meant to be easy. So we should not expect it to be easy. And we shouldn't be frustrated or annoyed or lose faith if it's not easy, because it wasn't meant to be easy. And how many verses in the Quran does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say that this life is a test? You're here to be tested. You're here to toil. We toil in this world, brothers and sisters, so that we don't have to toil in the hereafter. We can escape toiling in the hereafter. Number three from the lessons, obeying Allah does not come easy. That's why obeying Allah is from the hawajib, from the veils of al-Jannah, of paradise. It doesn't come easy. It's from the makarih. It's something that you have to force yourself to do. It doesn't come easily, but if we condition ourselves to obey Allah and make obeying Him our habit. So at the beginning, when we first, for example, night prayer, it doesn't come easily. It's hard to get up, especially, for example, in the winter and the nights are long. It's hard. Or even the summer when the nights are short and you get less sleep. It's hard to interrupt your sleep in the middle. It's hard to get up and, if for example, in the wintertime, the house is cold and you're under the covers and it's so warm, and you hear that alarm go off at 3 a.m. for tahajjud. It's so easy to, just turn it off and roll over. It's hard to get out of that warm bed, step onto a cold floor, walk into a cold bathroom, make wudu with cold water, and pray. It doesn't come easy, but if we do it, if we make ourselves do it the first time, make ourselves do it the second time, pretty soon it becomes what? It becomes our habit. It becomes a part of our nature, to the point that if we don't do it, we feel guilty. And if a voice inside of us tells us not to do it, we hush that voice up. We refuse to listen to that voice. Why? Because we become accustomed. It's become part of our nature. And also, we've developed an affinity for that act of worship, for obeying Allah. So this is the thing. At the beginning, it's difficult, but we have to make this mujahada. As the Prophet is basically telling us in this hadith, and why this hadith is so pertinent to the bab of striving, is because basically the Prophet is saying, strive against yourself, force yourself to obey Allah. It'll come naturally after a while. Fourthly, last but not least from the lessons, hardships and difficulties, brothers and sisters, are not an indication that Allah is angry with us, that He has forsaken us, that He does not love us. To the contrary, bil'aks. In reality, these hardships and struggles can serve as an indication, one, that we are from the people of paradise, as the Prophet said, وَحُجِّبَتِ الْجَنَّةُ بِالْمَكَارِهِ. That the veil of paradise, or from the veils of paradise, is what? Is the hardships and the demands. Or what is hard and demanding, that which is hard and demanding, the demands of deen. So when we have these hardships and struggles, that's an indication that what? We're on the right path. Secondly, it's also an indication that we are from those, not that Allah hates, but rather we're from those that Allah loves. As the Prophet said in the Hadith, إِنَّ اللَّهَ إِذَا حَبَّ قَوْمًا ابْتَلَاهُمْ. Indeed, Allah, if He loves a people, He will test them. He will expose them to hardships and calamities in accordance with their ability to bear them, because He loves them. Why? Because those hardships cleanse them and purify them of their sins in this world, so they enter the hereafter sinless, bi'idhnillah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who He purifies in this world, and we enter the hereafter sinless. Before closing, brothers and sisters, I want to say that there are quite a few brothers and sisters who, may Allah reward them, have been following this content, have been joining us live when they could, and catching up thereafter with the recorded lectures if they couldn't be with us live. I realize that some of those brothers and sisters are actually from the Charlottesville community, and some of them are from outside. Many of them are from outside. I see the names of the people who are giving positive feedback, liking the videos, etc. And so there are many people. I also see the people who are joining every day, following, becoming followers of the Facebook page. And some of you may know, and some of you may not know, that this is my last month in Charlottesville. And after this month, inshallah ta'ala, I'll be moving on, inshallah ta'ala, for other opportunities. And some of you may want to continue to consume this content. You may want to continue to follow these videos, whether related to Riyaadus Saaliheen or other content. And so, because I won't be on this channel anymore, I want to recommend that you follow a channel on YouTube, my Facebook page, and Instagram that I have created with a group of my colleagues, and it's called Al-Islam As-Safi. And if you look for the YouTube channel specifically under As-Safi, which is spelled A as in apple, S as in Sam, hyphen, S as in Sam, double A as in apple, F as in Frank, I as in India, and Y as in Yankee. If you look for me on YouTube, search for that under YouTube, you'll find the videos of Al-Islam As-Safi, and you'll also be able to link to our Instagram and Facebook pages. And so I just want to encourage those of you who are following the content and want to continue to follow these lectures and other similar lectures to go to that page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram so you can continue to receive this content and other content which we plan to make in the future. So please, brothers and sisters, join us, subscribe, and also spread the word to others that you know. We really appreciate you. We appreciate your support for this programming and other programming. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for everything that you're doing. As always, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, bless your health, bless your wealth, your spouses, your children, your wives. Bless you and make you blessed wherever you may be. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us from those who listen to the talk and follow the best of it. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from those who He teaches beneficial knowledge and He truly allows to benefit from that knowledge by making us from those who put into practice. هذا وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Jazakallah khair, Shakir, for putting the link up there. I appreciate you, man. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.